welcome to the No Cricket Podcast. I'm Anurag.
And this is Saurabh.
We're commentators at CrickBuzz.
So we watch a lot of live cricket.
And that means when everyone's asleep at 3 a.m.,
We're watching cricket.
when it's a Friday evening and you're at the bar,
We're watching cricket.
and when you're stuck in rush hour traffic on Monday morning.
We're watching cricket again.
So naturally, we have a lot of interesting conversations about cricket.
So we thought, why not record them in front of a camera and put them into the wide ocean that is the internet?
And that's exactly what we've done.
This is the No Cricket Podcast where we share our 2 cents about the sport that we love so much.
Hey guys, welcome to the No Cricket Podcast. This is our 4th episode, and today we're going to be talking about the English summer, the Test and the ODI summer, and what they've managed to achieve and how Bazball is shaping up. We have 2 very contradictory viewpoints up at store out here, and I'm sure it's going to be an exciting watch. So hope you guys have fun. So Anurag, just to start us off, what are your thoughts on Bazball and what Brendan McCullum and co are trying to achieve?
Yeah, well, for people that know us, it's no secret that I'm a big advocate of Bazball, and I really like what Bazball has done to not only English cricket, but the sort of flavor it's brought to Test cricket as a whole. Yeah, Bazball has converted me into an England fan of sorts. So I find the cricket obviously very exciting to watch, very very fun, and I think that's the effect that they wanted to have on the general public and sort of get more people into Test cricket. Make so the way I see Bazball, the way I see the inception of Bazball is they wanted it to sort of act as a bridge almost from limited overs cricket that people are more familiar with, to bring that same flavor into Test cricket, and show the appeal of Test cricket in a different light by making it seem a lot more familiar. So I think, yeah, that's to say that I'm a big fan of Bazball. There's no secret there, and I've enjoyed watching how England have gone about this summer. A lot of surprises there. A relatively lighter Test summer, if you might say, for England, with tests against the West Indies and Sri Lanka. Obviously, not the greatest teams at the minute. We've spoken about this previously, so they were expected to obviously do well and win. And it was more about giving opportunities to new players, seeing how they can perform. And I think the wider, grander focus is obviously on the Ashes next year. And you could see that in the way they played, in the types of players they selected. And just in general, you could sense that that's what they had in the back of their minds. And I think all that said and done, it was a pretty exciting summer nonetheless. We had 6 great Test matches, 5 of which England won, and that famous win from Sri Lanka in the last game. So plenty to discuss. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so Bazball it's fast, it's fun, it's exciting, it's getting people invested in Test cricket again. But I also feel like it has a lot of its pitfalls, and it's coming at the cost of a dynamic change in the system, which may or may not work out in the long run. What I feel is Bazball started off very cult-like, where
Mhm.
it was their way was right, and nobody was allowed to have any criticism. But that sort of eroded along the way, especially in this home summer. If you think back to the away series against India, where Ben Duckett made a statement saying India are trying to copy them with the way they play, and they ended up looking very foolish. So I think in comparison, there have been some chinks in the armor that have been corrected. If you look at this home summer, there were very limited reverse ramps from Joe Root. Ollie Pope and Ben Stokes played like Test cricketers again. So there has been some course correction in Bazball, but at the same time, I'm a little concerned about what the long-term applications of such a disruptive force could be in the English domestic circuit.
Yeah, definitely. I think Bazball has matured, to say. In its early days, obviously, you could sense that everyone is excited to play this sort of new brand of cricket, and they wanted to go all in, be brash, and sort of hit home the point that they were going to be fearless. And it's obviously a very fine line between fearlessness and recklessness. And you alluded to, sometimes England got into recklessness, and that was very clear when basketball first started. And yeah, I definitely agree with your point where you've said that basketball has had a sort of course correction. It's sort of arched back towards traditional Test cricket, if you can say that. Um, but yeah, they've still got their own flair to it. The way they've still held that character that they wanted to build, and they've still kept up that brand without looking as reckless as before. Like you said, no more. I wouldn't say no more, but a lot fewer reverse ramps from Joe Root. At the same time, again, they've been not scared to go out there and play their brand of cricket, play their shots, sort of keep aside and push out all the noise, so as to say. So yeah, I think baseball is maturing. It needed that time to mature, and I think it's in a good place. But I think you beg to differ.
Well, yeah, sure. And I was just looking at it in context of this home summer. And what's important is they played a very weak West Indies team and they played a Sri Lanka team that don't necessarily travel very well to Sena countries. So when the schedule was out, it would have been expected that England would win 6 out of 6. And they ended up winning 5 out of 6. And I would just like to focus on that one test match that they lost. And they were in a commanding position in that test match. And then to fold at 156 all out, I believe, after having a lead of 60, 70 runs and just gifting the game away to Sri Lanka was just a little bit of immaturity that still exists in baseball. And like, that is probably the next level that they need to get into. I remember very distinctly when Dan Lawrence just tried to charge Lahiru Kumara and got an edge through to the keeper, and Kumara just barked at him saying, "This isn't T20 cricket," and that just struck so true because there is people are not fools to be playing Test cricket a particular way all these years. So there is a certain technique to it. There is a certain style to Test cricket, and you can't just go gung ho and always expect results to come their way. Especially when you are in control of outcomes in games, you are in control of a lot of situations. It's just about keeping your heads and keeping a calm mind and winning important moments in a Test match. And at the end of the day, I think even Brendan McCullum, even Ben Stokes, they would want to be remembered as trophy winners. They don't want to be remembered as guys who play exciting cricket because the world only remembers you for trophies. And this isn't necessarily going to be the route that gets them to a Test championship final, to be honest, because games that are very winnable for them, their home games against relatively weaker opposition, they're just throwing it away in the name of attacking cricket. So I feel there's still a long way to go. And more importantly, it's if a mentality shift can be made to for the players to be a little more docile in their approach and a little more measured, a little more test-like. The thing that you said about playing a lot more traditional cricket, I think there's nothing traditional about baseball and the way England have gone about things. But yeah, it's just gonna be take that combination of genuinely traditional cricket mixing with just this free flowing cricket that gets people excited. That's what's gonna get you results at the end of the day. It's not always about filling stadiums.
Yeah, definitely. Again, I when you say they want to be remembered as trophy winners, well, yeah, that should ideally be the grand goal. But I'm not sure that's what Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes themselves are necessarily looking at. I think they've spoken many times about wanting to build a process, wanting to build a culture that will eventually lead them to win trophies. And I think they're content with the fact that they're not going to win trophies from day one. It's about working towards that goal, and they're very frank about that taking time, and you know that it's going to take time to build that sort of team, build that sort of culture, and for that to seep into domestic cricket as well. um, I think they're looking to do that first, and then for that process to build such a solid process that the results will follow by itself. So yeah, Bazball has definitely. You say they haven't got a lot of trophies, but it's definitely changed England's scores. in Test cricket. If you look at the period before that, I think they were in a miserable state under Joe Root. They won what two out of 17 or something like that. But after that, it's been a lot better, and I think that's the sort of impact that McCullum and Stokes have already had, while they continue to look towards the future, look towards creating creating not only match winners but also a team that can, like you said, go on to win trophies and then be remembered.
Well, absolutely. I think it's important to create a team that can be remembered. But one concern that I have about Bazball is how lopsided it is towards their batters. And what I mean by that is they're really empowering the batters to go and play their shots. And you've seen so many day one declarations happening under Ben Stokes. And then you have your bowlers in the mud for the next 2 days working really hard. I was just trying to think about the third test that they lost against Sri Lanka. What happened was their batters failed on the one occasion where if they would have got quick runs again, then they would have put the game beyond Sri Lanka. But the batters failed, and what that left their bowlers to do is defend a low target on a flat deck, which is again another consequence of Bazball, that you're getting a lot of flat decks in England nowadays. So the bowlers had to defend a low target on a flat deck, and while bowling aggressively throughout. So that's another concern where your bowlers are being worked to the ground and they're not necessarily getting the best conditions to express themselves compared to like Joe Root and Jamie Smith and Harry Brook are going to really enjoy what's happening with Bazball. But I don't think it's the same case for somebody like Mark Wood or Chris Wokes, who have to really grind it out in this current setup. And that's so evident with how the injury situation is panning up for England. So in this home summer itself, if you see Mark Wood, Gus Atkinson, Josh Tongue, and Josh Hull, there have been 4 players who've been injured. And I'm not a sports scientist, I'm not a sports doctor, but it'll be difficult to argue that there is no correlation between these injuries and not having enough recovery time. And that has been a consequence of Bazball. So, just to put some context, there was this one study done with football and the Premier League, where in the last 2 seasons, there's been a massive increase in hamstring injuries. And one of the main reasons for that was the schedule being too cluttered, where footballers are made to play 3 times a week. And you also have longer games where you have a lot of added time being given just as a rule change, which means that the players are just not getting enough time to recover. And surprise, surprise, does the situation seem very different with what's happening in English Test cricket, especially with how Mark Wood and Josh Hull and Josh Tongue have gone down? And also, these are youngsters. Josh Hull is a 20-year-old guy. He's never been subjected to such a rigorous schedule or training so hard. So it's going to have an impact on the body. And the worry is these could be some really long-term impacts. Bad injuries early on in a career could really derail what a sportsman's trajectory could look like. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Injuries are always a concern, especially when you're a fast bowler. They're never great. But again, I think I get your point about Bazwal sort of running their bowlers into the ground and giving them more than their fair share of workload. But I think again, this is a bit of a different debate about how tight schedules are these days. And I think yeah, Rob Key, who's England's director of cricket, he has spoken a lot about this as well. That players are playing way too much cricket these days, and the schedules are too tight. The turnaround time between games is so low, and again, like you mentioned, players aren't getting enough time to recover and recuperate. So I think that has these injuries have less to do with Bazball, but that's my take on it, and more to do with sort of the scheduling that's currently going on in cricket. If you look at England summer, right, they start off sometime in April with the county championship. They go through April, May, June. Then they've got the T20 Blast, the 100. So that's two fairly high profile limited overs tournaments, and there's just a pool of players that are playing all of these games, and maybe they're being stretched too thin. Again, this is a point that Dropkey did make in some of the interviews he did. So I think that's something they're looking towards addressing in the coming years. And again, to address these injuries themselves, I think England are looking to build a bigger pool of fast bowlers that they can turn to, so that these injuries don't happen. Firstly, by being able to rotate, I think that's one of the main reasons they wanted to get Josh Hull in, give him some experience, and groom him into being one of these fast bowlers that they can rely on. And you saw that again with Gus Atkinson as well. You could see that shift in direction that England wanted. Obviously, James Anderson had to retire to make way for someone like Gus Atkinson, and that was obviously a harsh call. How many sides around the world do you see going up to a legend of their side and saying, "Hey, look, I think it's time to go," so that someone else can take that place and get ready and uh, be an asset for the team moving forward. So I think that was very brave of them, and it was again in response to sort of managing workloads and creating a pool of fast bowlers that they can turn to, and a pool of fast bowlers which consists of match winners.
So that's enough for their home summer. And I was just having a look at what impact Bazball is having on the selections and on their domestic circuit. So I just looked at some stats. So in the 2023 County Championship, the leading run scorer was a guy called Josh Bohannon, who scored 1,257 runs in 14 matches. The second highest scorer was Tom Wesley, who scored 1,130 runs. Joe Clark scored over 1,000 runs. But the guy who got picked for England in last year and a significant part of this summer as well was Dan Lawrence, who scored 800 runs. But you know what differentiated him and the rest? He got the most sixes last year in the county championship. And that is evident even in the selections they made this year, where, for example, Joe Clark and Jordan Cox, they were amongst the leading run scorers. So was Keaton Jennings. And again, none of these three players had a look in. Keaton Jennings would have been an ideal replacement for Zach Crawley being injured. But instead, they moved towards Dan Lawrence again purely because he has more flair to his game. He has a more attacking approach towards how he's gonna play, and the problem is a little more deeper than this. If you look at what's happening to some of the older English players who are still very relevant. So somebody like Tom Sibley, for example. So Tom Sibley averaged almost 40 in the 2023 county championship. And in the 2024 season, he's averaged 45. So, and Dom Sibley is a guy who's been playing a certain way all his life. It's very difficult for him to now turn around and be like, okay, I need to smash the ball. So, what happens to a guy like Dom Sibley? Is it his fault that his cricket career coincided with Brendan McCullum taking over? How can you explain him falling off a cliff when he did not do a lot wrong in his limited time as an English player and as well in the county circuit? Another example of this could be Ben Foakes. Ben Foakes has an average of close to 40 while playing at home. And again, he was told to make way for JB Smith. I cannot argue that decision after what JB Smith has done in this English summer. But still, it's a little harsh on a guy like Ben Foakes who wasn't really at fault. It's just that the management is not looking at players who are a certain type, and there are a sizable people. There's a sizable chunk of players who are of this certain type who have grown up playing attritional cricket, who have grown up playing over my dead body cricket. So what happens to them, and how are they expected to just change overnight and just adapt to a style of cricket that may or may not succeed in the long term? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up selection. Actually, this is one of the points that I actually feel the Brendan McCullum and Stokes management is actually doing well, as opposed to not well. And I think the reason that I feel like this selection process works is the criteria for selection has never been clearer, and now there's a clear message, and it's being communicated to the players as well. Again, another interview. I go back to an interview that Rob Key did. He was very particular and clear about this, that they're speaking to all of these players, like you mentioned, all of these players that are scoring runs, taking wickets. I think Sam Cook was another name that kept cropping up. Took something like 300. He's taken something like 300 wickets in the last few seasons or so. But the messaging has been clear from the management. They're saying this is what you need to do to get into the side, and there are no ifs and buts. They're very clear about the types of players they want to pick, and they're again very clear about the type of cricket they want to see. And coming to your point about Dan Lawrence and why he was sort of maybe picked over people like Keaton Jennings or uh, Joe Clark, was it? So I think that sends another message about saying that this management backs their players. Once they pick their players, they back them to the core, and that's what allows the rest of the team to play with freedom. So if they brought in Dan Lawrence for a season and then cast him out without giving him many opportunities and really giving him a stage to perform, then again it would send the wrong message. It would send people back into their shell and make them insecure about their positions. Every second game, you'd have people like maybe Ben Duckett or even Zach Crawley thinking, "What's going to happen if I play the shot and nick it, and I'm out for let's say two or three ducks or low scores?" They wouldn't be playing with that same fearlessness anymore. So I think uh, this selection process is key to the type of cricket they're playing. It wouldn't work if they weren't. If they did, it wouldn't work if they didn't back their players, and that's exactly what they're doing. And again, the messaging is absolutely clear. And Jamie Smith, obviously, I think he's been the find of the summer. At least for me, he's someone that I'll look out for every time England play. He's been extremely impressive. And again, like you mentioned with Dan Lawrence, he's obviously been picked because of his batting. And whatever Ben Folks might average, Jamie Smith averages almost the same, and he gets those same runs much quicker. The only question was obviously about his glove work, but I think he was absolutely faultless throughout the summer. I can't remember him dropping any catch or even conceding buys. So he was simply superb behind the stumps and obviously in front of the stumps as well, getting all of those runs, getting 100. He got 103 50s, and the last of which was extremely impressive against Sri Lanka. So quickly going back to that game, England found themselves in an absolute hole. I think they were 90 for 6 or something, and had it not been for a superb rescue act from Jamie Smith, they wouldn't even have got that 150. The game would have been over a lot earlier. So his runs gave England a bit of a sniff. Obviously, it wasn't enough as it turned out, but I think he looks like he's made and he's ready for international cricket. He didn't look like a player who played just 6 Test matches. He looked like a player who played 60. And he also spoke after the game. I think he spoke with a lot of composure. He looked calm. He has a great temperament. So Jamie Smith is definitely a player I'll be looking out for every time England play. I think he's going to be an all format player for England for a long time.
Well, totally. This is about the batters. I just want to quickly point out about what's happening with the bowling department as well. And the best example to give of this is of Shoaib Bashir, who is actually second choice spinner for Somerset, but and with first choice being Jack Leach. But when they play for England, it's the other way around. And the main reason that Shoaib Bashir is picked is just because he's a more attacking bowler. He has the tendency to get more wickets, even if he might not be as controlled a bowler as Jack Leach is. And looking back to their county season again, their leading wicket taker last season was a guy called James Porter, who took 34 wickets. And after him was Brett Hernan, who who's this year's leading wicket taker, my bad, with 62 wickets. And the people who've made it to the English team, they have got nowhere close to these kind of wickets, namely Matthew Potts and Josh Tongue and Josh Hull. Josh Hull, in fact, is a guy who averages 57 in with the ball, and he's played only 11 domestic games so far. So there is a very clear reason why it's happening, but it's also, are you really rewarding talent at the end of the day? And none of these guys, James Porter is not somebody who's at the twilight of his career. He's just a military medium bowler who's going to be very similar to a very dibbly-dobbly sort of bowler, and that's maybe not what England are looking at. But again, it's not his fault that he can't bowl 140. He can hit it at the length really well, and he can get you wickets in those conditions. But is his skill going to be utilized by this system? I highly doubt it. What are your thoughts on how they're going about their bowling selections?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit it on the head when when you said that it's not James Porter's fault that he doesn't bowl 140, and I think that's exactly how England are looking at it. If he doesn't bowl 140, unfortunately, and England want a bowler who bowls 140, I mean, I'm afraid there's nothing to it. This England management have been very clear that they're picking players based on potential and not on numbers. And you could see that with Josh Hull. Obviously, he averages what a 50, 60 in domestic cricket and has played only a handful of games. But they see potential in him. They see that maybe with his height and with his action, there's potential for him to bowl even quicker and do a lot better than what he's done. So they're picking based on potential, and I think that Josh Hull selection was a bit rushed. I'll admit. The only reason they gave him a game, I think, was to get him into the feel of international cricket, give him a bit of exposure. I don't think if England were playing, let's say, India or Australia, I don't think Josh Hull would have got a game. So I think yeah, these are all selections that are looking ahead, and again they've alluded to the fact that they'll pick players based on attributes. So if they need someone who can run in and bowl quick, and if they think that's what's going to get them wickets, they're not going to pick another bowler like James Porter, who's probably picked up a lot of wickets but only bowls medium pace. They're not going to pick him because he's picked up wickets. They're going to pick someone like maybe Matthew Potts or a Saqib Mahmood or whoever it is, who they think will get wickets in different conditions in places like Australia, maybe South Africa, or or wherever else they might need that type of bowler. And again, Shoaib Bashir, they pick people like Shoaib Bashir and Tom Hartley because they thought that these tall spinners will do well in India, and they did. So I don't think they've sort of gone beyond the thought of an international cap being a reward for doing well in domestic cricket. I think they've moved past that, and they're looking at players specifically for specific conditions, and they're looking at specific attributes that help them succeed in different conditions.
Well, totally fair, and to the credit of Brendan McCullum and the entire England management, the clarity on what they want has never been more pronounced. But what I feel is this is devaluing a county system that has been working so well. It's devaluing the art of getting runs. It's devaluing the art of getting wickets, because at the end of the day, it's an inborn skill that's going to be more prominent and more required in this English setup. And I'm also looking at it from a long-term lens. What happens 3, 4 years from now if the Bazball experiment fails? What happens if Brendan McCullum decides, I've had enough of this England team, I want to change in my life? You're going to get a new coach in, and the new coach would want to play a different style of cricket. But will he have the tools to develop that sort of cricket? Will we have attritional cricketers like Dom Sibley left in the circuit if this is what is expected out of all of the English county? So a long-term game on what could happen with the English county scene and what kind of players they develop. is what is a little concerning, and the jury will be out 4 or 5 years from now, depending on how successful Bazball is.